This is John Gilroy from the Federal Tech Podcast.
And this is Chris Towsend, Vice President of Public Sector at Elastic.
Today, we're going to talk about Elasticon. Hit the music, Claude.
Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast, where industry leaders share insights on innovation with a focus on reducing cost and improving security for federal technology. If you like the Federal Tech Podcast, please support us by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcast.
Welcome to the Federal Tech Podcast. My name is John Gilroy, and I will be your moderator. Well, Elasticon sounds like some kind of a superhero or something, doesn't it, Chris?
It is a superhero event, John. we haven't been able to do it for the last few years because
I know.
We've been on lockdown. So we're very excited about Elasticon coming up on February 1st.
I got to get some kind of like an audio effect. Elasticon! Oh, no. So when's it coming? When's Elasticon coming? When's it coming, Chris?
February 1st, 2023, John. We're going to get our superhero customers and partners all together at the event at the Marriott DC. We're really looking forward to it.
You got to wear superhero costumes. My daughter goes to these events where there are all these costumes and everything else, so it's good. So I guess the question that everyone's thinking is Elasticon. So what is Elastic? What is Elasticsearch? I think by now, many of my listeners have heard of this concept of Elasticsearch, and they have some basic idea what you do. But I wanted to get Chris in the studio today to explain to our audience the value that Elastic can bring to the federal government, how it can save money for the federal government, and maybe to learn more, attend this event on February 1st. But before we begin, give us a thumbnail sketch of your company, please, Christopher.
Well, first off, John, thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be speaking with you again. It's been a long time. I joined Elastic about 90 days ago, so I'm brand new to the organization myself. And I'll tell you, John, and you hit the nail on the head, Elastic is one of the best kept secrets in technology. When Elastic approached me about joining the organization, I had to do a lot of research myself on exactly what Elastic did. And Elastic is a leader of they have started out as an open source company, founded back in 2012 by Shai Bannon, who lived in Europe, and his wife was a culinary student, and he needed a way to search for recipes. So he built a search platform, and then that evolved into an open source development project, which evolved into Elasticsearch, the company, back in 2015. They started acquiring different capabilities and built the Elastic Stack. And from there, it's really taken off, and we're approaching $1 billion organization today. But in a nutshell, the platform, it sits at the intersection, John, of data analytics and cybersecurity, right? The two hottest spaces in technology and problems that our government customers are really struggling with and how to solve. And Elastic underlies a lot of those capabilities across government and private sector. And some of the largest name organizations out there in both the private sector and government rely on Elastic's technology to do search, to do data analytics on cross-platform, cloud platforms and on-prem. They rely on Elastic to secure their organizations, to do full stack observability. So I know we'll talk a lot more about it, but as you can see, I'm excited to be here. It's a great company, a great culture, and some of the best people I've ever worked with.
Well, Chris, I've known you for a while, and you're kind of a young puppy. You don't remember back in 1971. Back in 1971, there's this guy named Marvin Gaye, a DC native, by the way, and he released an album called What's Going On? And I've been doing all this research on Elasticsearch and cybersecurity and SIEM and SOAR and XDR, and it all boils down to what's going on. I mean, what you can do is you can allow a federal agency to answer Marvin Gaye's question is, what's going on in my network? And know in detail what's going on because of your ability to absorb so much information from so many different sources. Is that right?
Absolutely, John. And I love the way you put that. And I'll have to relay that to our marketing organization. I love the Marvin Gaye spin on what we do. But you're right. It's hard to really define what Elastic does in just a context of a single product category, because you're spot on it. We have the ability to search and correlate data from so many different areas across multiple cloud environments, across structured and unstructured on-prem. This is the reason that it's so widely deployed in so many industries and relied on by so many organizations because of the platform is so malleable and so flexible, and because of the open source roots, it integrates with so many other tools and technologies. It's just a very flexible platform. And as we try to use data to improve security, or use data to better affect the mission of our agency, or use data to provide an improved customer experience to the citizenry that's accessing government entities, Elastic sits right at the nexus of that. And you're right, it allows our customers to understand what's going on in their environment, where their data is, how to organize their data, access their data. And there's just a ton of uses for that. One of the most common uses that we see across the federal space is cybersecurity and organizing and accessing data to provide. We've also evolved into a full stack observability capability where we can do things like application performance monitoring. So we hear a lot, buzzwords like XDR, next generation SIEM. We deliver some of the most advanced capabilities in that area. We acquired a company a few years ago called Endgame that provides us visibility all the way down to an endpoint agent as well now.
Well, Chris, there are people who may be listening to this, a year from now or 6-8 months from now. And one real nice thing we have is this podcast is going to sit on the server and people can access it and get more information about Elasticsearch. And I was at your website today, and you've got this great report. It's called the Elastic 2022 Global Threat Report, where it talks exactly about what you've just been doing in detail. And you can download this report. Where's the best place to go to find this report? What do you think?
Well, elastic.co. You can go to our website and download the report. You can also just go to Google and type in Elastic Threat Report and pull it up. It was just released the other day. Like you said, it's our first threat report that we've put out. And that was really, again, a response to demand from our customers and partners. We're doing so much now in the cybersecurity space across all of the public sector organizations. So the Department of Defense, civilian, almost every civilian agency uses Elastic in some capacity for cybersecurity. We're very broadly deployed across the DoD, Army, and Air Force, and increasingly Navy, and very broadly deployed also in the intelligence community as well as the state and local areas. So not only our public sector, but our private sector customers were asking for us to publish a report on and talk about what we're seeing out in the environment and what trends we're seeing, what information we're seeing, and so we did. We published our first threat report, and we're pretty excited about it.
Well, you're actually in a pretty good position. You're kind of like the middle linebacker because you see all the threats coming from different directions. And because of that, you can have a detached opinion of what's going on out there. Because I see you working with Google and AWS and Microsoft and working with that. You're kind of like Swiss Army knife working with all these different companies. But the advantage is you can get to see different threats from different organizations and you can present it in a way that's not going to be biased. It's going to be objective. And I think that's what's really important for these reports is that a federal agency can read this report and then project where they're going to focus in next year. And it's probably not going to be on the distributed denial of service attacks. It's probably going to be something to do with phishing, but I think reports like yours will reinforce that.
You're spot on, John, as always. It really comes from our open source roots, and that's one of the reasons our customers are so passionate about the technology because we're an open source capability. Our customers trust us, and they've used us for a long time and built this into their platforms. And you're right, because we are cross-platform, because we run in Amazon and Microsoft and Google, and we run on-prem, we have broader visibility to a lot of the threats and a lot of the trends that are occurring today. And it's funny. I've been in cybersecurity on and off since the late 90s, and as it relates to cybersecurity threats, what's old is new again, right? It's credentialed access and not using two-factor authentication and not using strong passwords that are still creating a lot of the vulnerabilities in the cloud platform. Adversaries or bad actors are still trying to repackage old tools. It's very time intensive and expensive to create a true 0-day new tool. It's like building a new piece of software. So, we're seeing a lot of trends around obfuscation repackaging of old tools using Trojans and other devices to be able to bypass the detection of endpoints and other security tools that exist today. But which has been happening forever, in terms of the cybersecurity threats we're seeing. But we are also seeing some new and interesting trends around increased focus on Linux endpoints. So 39% of the malware we're seeing today is focused on Linux, and it used to be the preponderance of your attacks were targeted toward Microsoft, and they still are. 54% is focused on Microsoft, but Linux endpoints at 39% is high. And, that's, again, one of the reasons that we moved into that endpoint space with that acquisition of Endgame, because that runs on a Linux platform as well, so we can protect Linux access points. But that's definitely a trend we're seeing, which you would expect as we increasingly move to cloud. But the threat report is great. It's very comprehensive. It does have some unique trends, and of course, it does talk a lot about some of the old threats that continue to be repurposed but remain effective.
Well, you said endpoint. I'm taking notes here, and I recently did an interview with a guy named Dr. Tim Robinson, and he's pretty vendor neutral, and he talked about securing things on the edge. And you can listen to that episode 37 if you want. And this is a guy who was in the Marine Corps, and he had earned a PhD in computer science. He said when he started off, he had a rifle and a router. So I just love that interview. And he would be a good guy to talk about edge points. And maybe he would recommend using Elastic depending on the specific application. He's very careful about what applications he would use for a warfighter and what he'd use inside an office. And so I think that's part of Elastic, is being able to be that flexible to know where to adapt for three-letter agency or for more civilian-facing agency. Is that right?
Oh, again, John, you're spot on. You really do your research well. Absolutely. One of the great things about the Elastic platform is it is so flexible depending on the environment in which you want to use it. So if you've got an environment where you've got, very well-trained security operators that are able to ingest and use the information to go after bad actors in real time, that's a different capability than maybe you want in a tactical environment that has to be effective, but very basic and often in a detached environment. So that's one of the great things about Elastic, is we're not relying upon connectivity to be able to do policy enforcement at the edge, right? Our endpoint can work in a detached environment, where a lot of the endpoints today are focused on the cloud and cloud attachment only.
Yes. Keep talking. The military guys out there saying, keep talking, because they may be in the middle of nowhere, have nothing. I mean, disconnected, and maybe a satellite link, maybe not, maybe nothing. And so you have to have that flexibility that some systems may suggest or may put on their printed brochure, but may not really have, huh?
You're again, John, you're exactly right. And look, the cloud security tools that are out there today that can pull down information in real time with the latest threats and dynamically update their platforms are great. And they are really helping the good organizations out there stay ahead of the bad actors. However, that doesn't apply to every environment. There are still a lot of disconnected environments that just do not have that cloud access for a number of reasons. If it's a tactical deployment out in the Middle East someplace, or it's in a secured environment in the intelligence community that's air gapped, you can't always have that cloud connectivity. So it's important to be able to still drive that security and provide that level of security in an air gap disconnected environment. And Elastic allows you to be able to do that.
You mentioned Linux, and my first image was I was at a trade show once interviewing people from the floor, and this guy showed up with this penguin, and I interviewed him about Linux and back and forth, and I never thought of Linux as an attack vector, but I always associate open source software with Linux. And I've heard the term mentioned in regards to Elastic of open security. So open security, maybe you can define that for our audience, please.
Yeah, open security sounds counterintuitive, right? You think security should be in a black box and very secretive. But at the end of the day, more transparency in security tools and developing security capabilities and sharing capabilities around security is really important and makes the tool more effective. The more collaboration that we can drive between public and private sector and really develop those open capabilities and those open tools, the more effective they are against the bad actors. When you start to develop things in a black box, it's easy to miss something where you inadvertently create a vulnerability in a tool set that allows the bad actors to exploit that. So open security is a great concept, and one obviously that Elastic's very supportive of with our open source roots.
I got to fall back on my roots, my radio roots. So for more information, Elastic, elastic.co. Lots of information there. You can download the current report. That's pretty easy. So we've got open source, we've got open security. And I want to toss out a 4-letter word, and the word is SOAR, SOAR. I hedged on the edge there, didn't I? so where does SOAR fit in this conversation? I love the acronym, but where does it fit in the conversation?
Yeah, security, orchestration, automation, response. And the holy grail in security has always been, John, again, back when I started in the industry back in the late 90s, was to get the tools to work together in an automated fashion. So, hey, if you detect something at the edge, you detect something in the network, you detect something at the endpoint, that the tools could correlate those events in real time and take action against the bad actor trying to exploit your environment. Now, there's some reasons that we haven't fully automated the security environments, because false positives, you can end up, doing more harm than good in some cases. But SOAR platforms are increasingly commonplace in your security operating environments, in your SOCs. And Elastic can feed those SOARs, all that data that we talked about earlier that we can go out and collect across multiple platforms and aggregate that data. We can feed those SOAR platforms and give them the data they need to be able to take those automated responses against those bad actors in real time. Again, because of our open source roots, we're very easy to integrate with most SOAR tools out there. So again, we've got partnerships with just about all of the SOAR vendors out there and do a lot in the background with the SOC environments to feed those SOARs with our data. Yeah,
I know people from Google and AWS, Microsoft, and you probably play all those different companies together. I have to ask this question. I don't want you to name. Remember the Seinfeld episode? They're going to name names. Okay, now, Christopher, I don't want you to name names, but I want you to take and talk about challenges that other people have had in accomplishing this task. In other words, how do people fail doing this coordination? It must be challenging to do with all these different forms coming in. So what's the biggest challenge people have in doing this kind of coordination?
Yeah, it's a great question. So again, if you look at it just from the SOAR perspective, the challenge is always around the false positives and the integration of the tool sets and the commonality of the language and the way the tools communicate. And a lot of companies out there have tried to build brokers that allow you to integrate or orchestrate information from different tool sets to be able to take action. But it's really the ability to collect that data, keep that communication platform up to date so that you can ingest information from multiple tool sets in a common way to be able to take a common action against a threat. And that's still evolving. In terms of the data collection, really where Elastic thrives, and again, collecting and aggregating and searching that data and doing it very, very quickly, we do it in a very efficient manner that allows you to tier your data so that we allow you to store data that you may not need to access on a regular basis. We allow you to do it in a way that's less expensive, but you can still get to it relatively quickly. And you can imagine as the data sets continue to grow and they're growing exponentially, the cost of indexing and maintaining those data stores is really expensive. And Elastic does it in a way that's extremely efficient. We don't force you to replicate the data. We have this capability called cross-cluster search, which allows the data to stay in the where it resides, so you don't have to replicate it back into our platform. And it's extremely efficient, extremely effective, and much less expensive. So, I would say that's one of the biggest challenges in terms of handling data is the cost associated with handling data and forcing our customers to replicate the data, which we don't do.
I want to go back to Microsoft. We mentioned them earlier kind of in passing. Last week, I was at a coffee shop in Ashburn, and I was walking to my car, and someone got it was a friend of mine who worked for a very, very large Microsoft partner. And Microsoft's kind of interesting. The last Microsoft event I went to, Red Hat was a speaker. And so I think that you folks work with Red Hat and I imagine with Microsoft as well. So when it comes to Microsoft Azure, any stories to tell our audience about how you work with them?
Yeah, we have a great partnership with Microsoft. In fact, earlier this year, we just signed a new multi-year agreement with Microsoft Azure that helps organizations more easily search, observe, and protect their applications, data, and infrastructure using Elastic Cloud on the Azure portal and the Azure platform. And, this increases joint investments across technology integrations and the go-to-market and co-selling activities that we have with Microsoft and Elastic Cloud. So we have a very close partnership with Microsoft, as we do with Amazon and Google as well.
Well, now it's time to get up close and personal. Remember years ago, they did those shows about the Olympics up close and personal. So you say you've just been Elasticsearch for a little bit here. So what surprised you about Elasticsearch? What did you not expect?
John, I was blown away by how widely deployed Elastic is in both the private and the public sector. I mean, the largest, customers, the household names, the industries, the private sector industry customers out there are all using Elastic. All the public sector organizations are using Elastic. We're so widely deployed in DoD and civilian. The intelligence community highly relies on Elastic. I was just shocked about.
I'm going to use your lead-in from a few minutes back.
Yeah.
In a town full of secrets, the best kept secret in town is Elasticsearch, isn't it?
It is. You're right, John. And one of the other things that I was really just blown away with was Elastic was the culture here and the people. It's a phenomenal organization, great culture, one of the best I've ever been a part of, and working with some of the best people in the industry. So it's been great. I'm 90 days in. But just really blown away by the passion that our customers have for the technology, the passion our partners have for the technology, and how widely deployed the technology is across both the public and private sector.
I think that's really the summary, the headline for this interview is that I've known Elastic for many years, and every time I speak to people at Elastic, I'm just amazed at the wide variety of organizations they work with. I mean, they're in so many different agencies, and by the way, in the commercial world, they're in such a wide variety of commercial areas too. It's sometimes it's hard to describe what Elastic can do because it's so flexible and malleable. I see it in banks. I see it in financial treasury. I see it all through the DoD. So on one hand, it's easy to describe. It's difficult to describe though, isn't it?
It is because it's truly a platform, right? Everybody wants to be a platform. Everyone talks about being a platform. Hey, we're the platform for this. We're the platform for that. But if you look at what we do at Elastic, it is truly a data platform that can, as you said, it's very malleable and there's a lot you can do with it. And our customers continue to find new ways to use Elastic to organize and search their data. And again, cybersecurity is a big focus. Now, application performance monitoring, observability. And then, of course, as our customers are using data more and more and more to affect their mission, we sit right at the nexus of that. So it's just an exciting time to be at Elastic.
So, Chris, I'm going to give you the final word here. So where do you think Elasticsearch is going to soar in the next few years?
Well, like I said, John, we're just crossing the $1 billion threshold, and this is just the beginning. We're growing like crazy. We've got a wonderful organization. We got lots of open positions. So if anybody's looking, please come to the website, check our open positions. We're hiring and we're growing like crazy. I think we're, in the next couple of years, we want to be a $2 billion company, but I think we're going to blow past that and see $5-10 billion in the not too distant future as our customers increasingly rely on data for all sorts of mission applications. Again, we're just really at the nexus of many of those efforts.
That's great. Well, unfortunately, we're running out of time. I'd like to thank my guest, Christopher Towsend, Vice President at Elastic. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome, John. And don't forget, Elasticon, February 1st, 2023.
Thanks for listening to the Federal Tech Podcast. If you like the Federal Tech Podcast, please support us by giving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts.